This narrated PowerPoint presentation, drawn from a class by Amber Barnato with her students Regina Triplett, Sebastian Sterenthal, Cynthia Grady, Eddie Nunez, and Carla Salgado, will provide you with some tips for presenting a poster at the SMDM Lee Lusted moderated poster session. Open poster sessions are challenging. Tell me about some of the ways that they are unique.
It's tricky to even figure out who's interested in your poster, because some people will walk by and they just want to read it and they don't actually want to talk to you, and so I feel bad like ambushing, being like, let me tell you about my poster, and then they're like, oh god, another med student is going to talk to me for 20 minutes, and sometimes you're like answering a lot of questions at once and you don't even know who to talk to.
Yeah, gauging interest quickly is, I think, important.
Yeah.
And tricky.
Yeah, and sometimes you have the people that have looked at the abstracts beforehand, or like they've either looked at the titles or read through them, and they go directly to yours because that's their area of interest, and so those people will want more information and will usually stay there longer.
First of all, you're always trying to gauge your audience. Is the person having a snack and walking by casually and their eyes are just landing on your poster? That's one kind of audience member. Did the person look up the abstract and seek you out and is basically coming up and they're saying, you know, wow, what you're doing is really interesting, tell me about it? Are they a judge?
Moderated poster sessions are easier.
The posters are all laid out, but they're laid out in pods, groups of say 6 that are thematically similar. And so all of the 6 poster presenters and a couple of judges will process together through the different posters. There's 10 minutes per poster. You want to have your presentation to be less than 5 minutes, so there can be 5 minutes of question and answers. Then at the chime you move on to the next one. And so you have a built-in little audience, so that keeps it kind of engaged. The expectation or the assignment is that you will be delivering a presentation. So it's actually nicer than this random poster session where you don't really know, you can't really tell how interested the audience is as they're walking by. These people have come and they're standing by your poster and they're expected to listen and they're expected to ask questions. That a poster is a visual medium, right? It is not a manuscript stuck to a board, and I think that's the most common mistake that I wouldn't say just trainees make, that everyone makes. They try to put too much on the poster, too much detail. What they're trying to do is they're trying to say, well, if someone really wants the detail, it's here. When the thing is, if someone wants the detail, they should read your manuscript. So when you have a visual media, what are the things that you want to highlight in your poster?
Figures, graphs.
Tables.
Whenever you can, you should try to leave 50% blank, like a lot of space to keep it really concise.
Any information that you have a tendency to want to present in text, you put it in a diagram of some sort, because again, you're thinking about the way you're going to present it orally, and to use this basically as the augmentation, because people aren't going to be reading it, especially for a moderated poster session. You're using it as an augmentation. You know, how can I present this in a way that's visual? And it's easier just to put the bullets, right? And I don't want to call it lazy because that sounds pejorative, and it's in fact what people often do. But what I'm trying to push you guys to practice is the art of the poster presentation. And sometimes I know it feels sort of dissatisfying, because it's like, well, I'm presenting it once and then I'm rolling it in the tube and throwing it in the trash. So it feels like, why go to all the effort? But again, it's about like, otherwise why bother? Why bother having a poster at all and not just talking? Right? Because you can tell us that same information talking, and having a bullet point doesn't help me. Right? It's about whether or not I can, when I'm processing the information, I'm hearing it auditorily, and there's something about your figure that is, I'm basically processing it in a different way. They provide fMRI evidence that all of us process the spoken word and the written word in the same part of our brain. So when someone's giving a PowerPoint presentation like Eddie, and he says, there were 5 ICUs and 3 Pennsylvania hospitals between today. Whether I listen to him or I read that bullet, the same part of my brain lights up. And so that means that I cannot attend to both of them simultaneously, right? Because they're being processed in the same place. I either have to listen to Eddie or I have to read his bullet. However, if instead he has a visual which supports the assertion he's making, it turns out that the way I process the information that comes from the figure, the picture, it actually is processed in a different part of the brain. And they've done these tests where they basically have people present the same information, where the evidence on the PowerPoint slide is either a text or a supportive visual. And there's like a 3 times greater retention of the information if the visual is an image as opposed to just text. So again, it's not just about like style or being cool. It's literally about people's ability to retain the information that they hear from you.
Know your audience. Make sure that the people who you're talking to understand what you're describing. Don't assume that they have some specialized knowledge.
I have a question. How do you feel in the table? Have you thought about, instead of the range, using like, what's a normal BNP or what's a like normal 6-minute walking distance?
That's a good point. Yeah, because this table, I kind of presented to people who know normal ranges, but people won't necessarily know these particular values.
We try to teach you guys is to think about who your audience is, who are not cardiologists.
Use informative titles. The title of your poster should be something that describes to the audience what you found. For example, the effect of blood pressure control on stroke in the elderly is uninformative. However, improved blood pressure control reduces stroke in the elderly is informative. You use the same principles in each of your subheadings. Instead of background, write a very brief description. Stroke is a leading cause of mortality. Same thing with your methods, your results, and your conclusions. Try to be informative. Similarly for the table and figure titles. Tell me what the takeaway is from the table or the figure in your title of that figure or table. You need to make sure you practice your 3 to 5 minute talk. Make it perfect.
One of the key mistakes you can make in that kind of a session is to talk the entire time, to basically spend the entire, say, 8-9 minutes giving your presentation and not leave any room for question and answers. This is a time when it's really important to time yourself and make sure that you actually are in under the 5 minutes. And some people even aim for about 3 to allow for more discussion. And so you have to make this decision about which parts require explication. What are the key bits that help someone get to the message that you're trying to tell?
Make sure you project your voice.
You progress around the room. It takes about an hour. There's some noises because in each of the other pods, right, the same thing is happening. There's a discussion. It doesn't have the general din of an open poster session. It's got kind of an organized din, where ideally the beginning of your poster pod will be separated in space from the beginning of the other poster pod, so there's not 2 groups progressing next to each other talking. But if that's the case, then you have to be prepared to project.
Use your hands to gesture to your poster. I want you to channel Vanna White. You're basically using your poster to draw your audience along to the key points and focusing in particular on the visual displays in your poster. Whenever you're in a position of gesturing towards a figure, I want you to tell us what the y-axis and what the x-axis is, and to tell us what the different colors represent. So here we're going to walk through some before and after posters. All right, here's a poster, Racial and Ethnic Disparities in Contraceptive Use. The key problems with this poster are that it is too text heavy. There's a lot of full sentences, relatively small text, and few visual displays. This is a poster that is hard to enjoy without reading. Additionally, the visual displays that are presented are all different formatting, and they're background white layered into a dark blue poster, which looks kind of tacky. Now here's the revised Racial and Ethnic Disparities poster. It is much more aesthetically pleasing. It's less text heavy. There's a unifying color scheme. The tables that are presented are similarly formatted to one another. There's many more visuals here. And although there aren't informative titles in background, objective, and methods, at least the results are a little more informatively titled: baseline characteristics, contraceptive use at last intercourse, and multivariate logistic regression models. Notice how she also added some visuals regarding the different kinds of contraception. Also, she turned what had previously been a bulleted list of methods into a flow diagram in orange arrows showing the different steps in her model building. Here's another poster, Brief Cognitive and Behavioral Screening in Children. Again, very small text and a heterogeneous display of visuals. They seem to be sort of smattered all over. There's not a clear way for me to decide which way my eyes should follow as I'm reviewing the poster. The center has a lot of visuals, which is good, but they're sort of dark. They're kind of hidden up against the dark background. Now here's the same poster, Brief Cognitive and Behavioral Screening in Children. Much more pleasing on the eye. The text is now entirely at the ends in the first column and the last column. And then the middle columns are entirely devoted to visuals. Part of those visuals include the methods under computerized testing, but it's not described as methods. You see there's a little bit better informative titles: study design, computerized testing, and then it goes on into results. The results are, again, more integrated visually, and they pop now against a white background. One of the things to notice about this poster is that the titles to the tables and figures are informative. Look, for example, at the bar graph with the yellow and blue bars. It's titled High Baseline Proportion of Elevated Behavioral Symptoms. That's the takeaway message from this figure. This poster, Area Index, a Novel Approach to Pulmonary Hypertension. Again, very small text, some visuals, but they're dropped in with white backgrounds and heterogeneous location. And again, it just kind of looks jig-jaggedy. So here's Area Index, a Novel Approach to Pulmonary Hypertension revised. This is much more aesthetically pleasing, and it looks more cohesive. All of the white background visuals are dropped into a white background poster. And you can see very clearly where you would follow along with the presenter as they would bring you towards each of the key visuals. It has informative titles, and it has a cohesive color design. And you can imagine the presenter using the Vanna White principle and moving his audience along from each of the different visuals to augment his story, to provide that visual support for the information he's telling them verbally.